Sukhi Hotu and welcome to the Buddhist Vihara's Facebook page. We are going live this evening here from the Buddhist Mahavihara's Dhammadana series on Facebook. And this evening we have with us our popular speaker here at the Dhammadana series. He's none other than Bhante Dr. S. Pemaratana Thera. Bhante has been very kind to us and has been giving his time to Buddhist Mahavihara's Dhammadana series. And in the last few months, he has been at least allocating one Sunday or even one Friday to be with us here at the Dhammadana series. And this evening, Bhante is going to talk on a very interesting subject, which I think most people are very curious to find out. Why do we get angry? And tonight, Bante will explain the mechanics of why we get angry and how do we overcome being angry easily. So, without much ado, I'd like to invite Bante Premaratana onto the studio. Good evening, Bante.
Good evening,
Oh,
brother.
oh,
Good
good
evening.
morning. Sorry, I'm sorry. You are morning in America.
Yeah, yeah.
How are you feeling, Bante, now after
Yeah,
your jab?
yeah, brother.
Uh,
I mean, things are under control here a little bit.
yeah.
So, we feel a little comfortable, but at the same time, when we see, the rising of the cases in other countries, we
Yes.
feel really sad. Let us
Yeah.
get
Yes,
fish.
especially in India, Bante, the numbers have gone way beyond what was expected. Even in Malaysia, the numbers are going up, still slowly rising.
And the same with Sri Lanka also.
Yes, yes,
Yes, we have to wish, for all people to develop their immunity and also develop
yeah,
mindfulness, if we
right.
have both. Yeah.
Okay, for those of you who are not very familiar with Bhante Pemaratana, let me quickly read his profile before we start. Bhante S. Pemaratana is the chief abbot of the Pittsburgh Buddhist Center in the USA. He holds a bachelor's degree in Buddhist studies from the Peradeniya University of Sri Lanka, a master's in philosophy from the National University of Singapore, and was conferred a PhD from the University of Pittsburgh. Bhante conducts regular workshops on meditation at his center and also at yoga studios in the greater Pittsburgh area. He also provides spiritual counseling to help Americans deal with challenges of modern living. So, with that, let us dive straight into this evening's Dhamma sharing, which is entitled Why Do We Get Angry? Bhante, kindly.
Yeah. It is so nice to meet with you all in this evening, of course, in this morning for me. And let us start our sharing, Dhamma sharing. Before we start, let us take a moment to spend a very reverential and mindful moment to express our honor and express our gratitude to the Buddha. And we were all fortunate to have the teachings of the Buddha to guide our lives. So let us take this moment to pay our tribute to the Buddha. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, dear friends in the Dhamma, and let us spend some time in exploring a very important matter that we all have to deal with in our lives. So why do we get angry? So today, our brother Leslie will help me to put these captions, and then that will help you to pay attention to important terms and important concepts that I'll be referring to in this talk. So this anger is an interesting phenomenon, right? And many of us do not really want to get angry. Many of us regret after being angry, and we Although we don't want to get angry, we get angry. So, and sometimes we do so many things that are not wholesome, and so many things that is not beneficial to ourselves, um, out of anger. And therefore we all want to like learn how to stay without getting angry. But all the despite of our need to stay out of anger, we all get angry. Let us therefore it's so important to understand the whole mechanism of this anger, what the Buddha has taught us about this emotion of anger. And today we will focus on the origin of anger or theory of anger, how anger arises, why do why do we get angry? And I think the reason, and I thought to bring this issue is a common universal issue that we all have, not you all, and also including myself. And I will make a confession in the beginning. And these days, I'm also experiencing a kind of displeasure, kind of irritation, and of course, many things are happening around the world, but mainly uh, uh, in my own case. These days, Pittsburgh Buddhist Center is planning to move to a new place, and so we found a nice, bigger place that we can give our service to a larger community. And so we are in the process of renovating that building that we are planning to move in. So and so therefore we hired a contractor, and there are workers who are doing those renovations. Of course, I have a committee to look into those matters, but I also have to oversee them. But what we find but what we find most of the time is that the workers, contractors, they don't really uh, 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 do their work in an efficient manner. They say that they will come on a particular day, but they don't appear. They don't come, and things get delayed, and so many things are not happening the way that we wish them to happen. And therefore, so I was experiencing this displeasure, this irritation inside my mind, and I was exploring, why these things happening. And so it's really important that we should explore this to understand what is this emotion, and how we can handle it. And is it really bad? Sometimes we tend to think that anger is very bad. Definitely, anger has uh, consequences, in favor, consequences that are not favorable to us. Um, but sometimes we need to understand different types of anger, different grades of anger. And so whenever we think about anger, we always think about aggressive form of anger. So that's only one form, aggressive form of anger that is directed to outside, out someone else, and can be really visible. But there are other forms of anger too. It's more like we can also have passive anger. Passive anger is very tricky. Passive anger is not something that we can easily see, and we may carry passive anger even without knowing about it. It's like more like lack of talk to someone, or maybe of giving a fake smile instead of genuine smile, or what we call giving a cold shoulder. And so passive anger can happen in a very subtle manner, in our families, in our workplaces. That's also one form of anger. There can also be a form of anger called assertive anger, which is a kind of you can call it anger, but more like a kind of is using a strong voice, or maybe strong tone, to bring an attention to something. Um, like, for example, when we talk to our children, if you want our children to pay attention to something, and if you want them to think that you are serious, sometimes we may use what we call assertive anger, like being assertive, being firm. So there are all different shades of anger. We need to understand, and there are different degrees. Um, so, but the problem is that we can have a very initial form of displeasure or dislike, but without our knowing, if we don't pay attention to that emotion, we may gradually develop that displeasure into a strong form of anger. So I think if you know the different grades of anger and different ingredients and different mechanism of this whole emotion, how that emotion will grow from a very initial displeasure to a very strong form of anger, if you know that mechanism, and we have better tools, we have better understanding how to deal with them. Let me share a story with you first to make things clear. And this is a story about a sage. Sage. Sage is someone who has evolved in his mind. It could be a monk, could be another contemplative meditator. Let's say it's a sage. And so one day this sage was traveling along a group of disciples, and then he happened to encounter a villager who lives in the village next to the forest. So that villager looks very frustrated and definitely angry, and he has lost some of his cows. So that is why he was frustrated. So as soon as he saw the sage, he started complaining about the loss of his cows, and then suddenly, very quickly, he started to insult and blame, scold the sage for something that happened months ago. That the sage was used to go to a village to get support from the people for his basic survivals, and then this man started to scold, insult the sage for trespassing his farm, and that happened a few months ago. And so he kept insulting and blaming and scolding. The sage quietly listened to him and was paying attention to what he has to say. And after a while, he and he just left. And the disciples who were behind this sage asked the sage, that man insulted you a lot, and something that is that insultation, that scolding is not fair. Why didn't you reply? Why didn't you, try to defend yourself? And you didn't really do any something wrong. But then the sage told the disciples, a month ago, when I was walking in the same path, suddenly a small branch of a tree fell on me. Fell on me. A small branch happened to broke away from the main tree and fell on me, and it hurt me, and even gave me a minor injury. And when that happened, do you think that what should I do? Should I blame or even beat the branch of the tree, or should I beat or blame the tree? Then the disciples told the sage, "Oh, it will be foolish to do that, master, because tree did not intend to hurt you. The branch did not intend to hurt you. It's just an accident. It's a natural accident. You just happen to be under the tree at that time, that like wrong place at the wrong time. And therefore, because the tree didn't have any intention to blame you, hurt you, you should not blame or hurt or beat the tree." Then the sage told the disciples, "What you just witnessed is also what not very different from what happened to me a month ago. Just like that branch fell on me, um, and this person was already frustrated and is going through his own pain inside. And we just happen to meet him, and then he just throw his anger to us. um, and therefore I just treated him just like that branch, and that's how I remain calm. So when you are listening to this story, don't think that I'm asking you to be a sage. And it will be, of course, we will eventually become sages. That should be our goal. We may not be able to stay calm as this sage all the time, but this story can help us to understand certain mechanism, of this anger, certain ingredients, certain elements of this whole experience of anger. And in this case, the sage was able to stay calm without getting angry. One reason is that he did not give full agency to this villager. Just like that branch, when the branch fell on him, he didn't give the full agency or the intentional agency to the branch or the tree. So sometimes when we give full agency to the other person, that other person is intentionally want to harm me, and that can make us really angry. But if you try to understand the circumstance of that person, and when we the more we understand that person is also a kind of victim to his own conditions and circumstances, we give a less agency to that person. So when we give less urgency to the person, we will get less angry. uh, and and that's very important element of the anger, and giving agency to the other people or other person. But sometimes many people may not be full agents of their actions. It doesn't say that, of course, even the branch that fell on the sage really hurt him. And of course, there's the hurt. There is some kind of pain there. Um but to understand that how things are happening due to causes and conditions, having this broader understanding can help us. Maybe not to like completely get rid of anger, but at least to reduce the anger. So let's see what are the other ingredients that we will add to this anger. As I told you earlier, there are different grades or different degrees of anger. And so we usually use this term anger or angry, but it doesn't refer to one single phenomena. And if you really contemplate or reflect your own experiences, you may begin to see there are different stages, there are different shades, there are different levels of this emotion, what we call anger. And therefore, I would like to talk about a spectrum of anger. The anger is a full spectrum. Thank you, Brother Leslie. Yeah, spectrum of anger, and it's kind of continuum too. So there's an initial beginning of what we call anger, and then there's a gradual progression. We start with kind of unpleasantness, and what we call disagreeableness. We may have certain unpleasant experience, certain disagreeable, certain experience that is not really nice. So that will be the first, like a beginning point of everything. So once we have this unpleasant experience, and if you're not mindful, and we will gradually develop a dislike towards that unpleasantness. And then we may, if you're not paying attention to that, if you don't see that dislike with the mindfulness, and then that dislike can move into irritation, a little stronger kind of dislike, irritation that doesn't want to be there, and doesn't want to have that condition, doesn't want it to be there. And then this irritation can go into resistance. Of course, irritation is more like internal, and resistance is like wanting to do something about it. Resistance and rejecting. And then after this level, it's more like a natural thing. Of course, there are. Of course, maybe even we will be able to like stop our whole continuum before that. But starting from the unpleasantness, dislike, irritation, and some form of resistance. It happens very quickly. And then, if you're not paying attention to that, sense of like that feeling of resistance, then we will move into what you call anger. Then we have emotion. We have like burst of emotion. That's certain energy inside our body and mind, and we are working under certain energy. We have suddenly become energetic. We want to say something, do something. And if we keep doing it, keep saying and saying things and doing things without any awareness of what we are doing, and if you get certain reactions from the other parties, and then that anger can even develop into what you call rage, more strong form of anger. It can be really dangerous. And then what will happen? Then the more we express those rages, more we indulge in this rages, more we maintain this state of the mind, and gradually it can develop what you call ill will. Ill will is more like an enduring a state of anger, and it can stay as like an underlying state of the mind, and ill will. And so those are the spectrum. So it started with a very simple thing, which is a very what we call unpleasant, some kind of unpleasant or disagreeable experience. Thank you, Brother Leslie. And that is where everything starts. And for this actually, we have a very interesting teachings of the Buddha, and we find in this teaching in the Anguttara Nikaya, in the sutta called Titya Sutta, there Buddha described interesting mechanism, how the anger can arise. And Buddha used two important terms. One is he called it patigha nimitta. Patigha nimitta. And then the other factor he called it ayoniso manasikara. These are very technical, important terms in Buddhist psychology. So patigha nimitta can be more like a sign of dislike. The initial sign of something that we don't agree with. And then if we add, if we add the whole process of unwise thinking, and that's the part that we are doing. We will encounter some kind of unpleasant or disagreeable thing, and then we kind of focus our mind on that, and we make that unpleasant thing as the major object of our experience, and we call it patigha nimitta. So once we select that unpleasant experience, disagreeable experience, and then once we focus our mind on that, and that becomes a sign of dislike, an object of dislike, object of resistance, and so that's the focus. And then on to that, the focus or the object or the sign or dislike, then we add all forms of unwise thinking that can grow this initial disagreeableness, initial unpleasantness into form of anger. So it is this unwise thinking that make this initial unpleasant experience into a form of anger. So what is this unwise thinking? And there are many explanations about unwise thinking. Of course, opposite of unwise thinking can be called wise thinking. We call yoniso manasikara. It has been translated in many ways, systematic thinking, in many ways. But mainly adding when we have this kind of a sign of dislike or object of dislike, and then we can interpret it in many ways. We can interpret it as intentional act of someone. We can interpret it as a threat. We can interpret it as an offense. And then our unwise thinking also can bring us to the memories of the past. Or this person has done this before, and and this thing has happened to me before. And you select all kind of unpleasant memories and bring them all. And there's a whole mechanism happening here. Thinking in different ways, and all these thinkings are like promoting that unpleasant, enhancing that unpleasant experiencing. So that's where actually we need to pay our attention to. What is this unwise thinking we are doing? How we select certain memories and bring them here, and how we interpret it. How we um, try to connect other things happening in the world. And so that whole process of unwise thinking is something that we need to pay attention to. That if we can do something about it, if we can understand the real role played by this unwise thinking that happen after we experience an unpleasant object, and we will see how we kind of contribute to our own anger. Of course, we are not fully. We are not some. There are certain unpleasant things happening around us, and there are certainly challenging things happening around us, and disagreeable things happening around us. There are certain pain is there, but what level of anger that we will experience will decide by the kinds of unwise thinking or the amount of unwise thinking that we are bringing in. So let's try to pay attention to that. So we can see this mechanism now. So first is unpleasant or disagreeable experience, and then habitual interpretation, and that what we call this is a part of unwise thinking, habitual interpretation. That we interpret an unpleasant experience, but our interpretation is not free; it's habitual. Let's see. Let's take an example. We may have um, a sign of dislike. Let's say you come home, you see a messy living room. Someone has make your living room a very messy place. So messy. So that can be a sign of dislike. Something that it's a disagreeable sign. But that's the initial thing. So it's initial dislike. But then we may quickly move to unwise thinking, and then we may think that, oh, okay, this should have been done by this person. Okay. And then we can have this, our interpretation of that whole unpleasantness is habitual. And we always try to, there are certain habits, certain habitual patterns that we have, developed in ourselves. And based on that interpretation, we can interpret, oh, okay, this should have been done by this person, and we can add more unwise thinking into it, like this is he's always like that, and he may have done this intentionally to make me mad. And the more you add those unwise thinking, and then you experience anger, what we call activation of our a pattern of emotions. And even that activation of activation of anger is also habitual. All our anger is kind of habit, actually. So our initial experience of dislike, of sign of dislike, is something that is natural, and then how we interpret it is a habitual activity, and how we react, how the habitual emotional reaction, anger, what form of anger we will have is also a pattern. We can have aggressive form of anger, we can have passive form of anger too. Sometimes we will shout, we will and try to do something about it, or sometimes we will swallow it, and we will maintain that as a passive anger, and we will not express it very vividly, but we will do things in a very cold manner in other interactions. And sometimes that pattern can be like inward directed. So there are certain many of us also have certain emotional pattern, that when we encounter a sign of dislike, we interpret it in a way that we put the blame on ourselves. Rather than blaming others, we put the blame on ourselves. Both are not healthy. And so instead of getting angry of others, we may get angry of ourselves. Why? So its anger is directed to oneself. And what one thing we need to understand, that these are all habits. So therefore, we need to pay attention to that. So,
Bhante, sorry, just to interrupt. Just a quick one. If you watch a lot of movies nowadays, Bhante, they say you need to always express your anger rather than keep it inside. If you bottle it up, as you say, passive anger, that's not bad because that's going to fester more and more and more, and it'll probably even lead to psychosomatic diseases and mental diseases. So it's better to let your emotions out and scream or bang something or break something, as opposed to keeping quiet and trying to resolve your problems.
but brother, yeah, thank you for sharing that, brother. Maybe psychologists may say that it will be better to vent your anger, like express your anger. But if you look into the teachings of the Buddha, Buddha would say that that is also not the best way to deal with anger. Because the brother, what is happening is that more we express anger, even like shouting or you're like banging something or throwing something away, and maybe it's kind of emotional release. But there's something else happening there. The more we express this, there's we strengthen the pattern. We strengthen that pattern of reaction, and the next time, and it is easy for us to express the same emotional pattern. And expressing or venting anger is not really a kind of releasing anger. It's actually enhancing that pattern of the anger. That is where, brother, the Buddha's instruction appears very unique. So what the Buddha's advice is actually more like a middle path. So I'm not saying that middle path, it doesn't mean a compromise of hiding anger and compromise and expressing anger. It's not really middle combining both expressing and hiding anger. But the Buddha's advice is that actually uh, rather than going to express it physically or like suppressing it internally, what we had to do is that we had to let that anger arise in our mind in its full force. We would let that whole emotions to arise in our mind, and we start to observe it, and we start to observe it, and we shouldn't feel guilty of being angry. So whenever we feel guilty of being angry, that's where we try to suppress it. But I think with mindfulness, what the Buddha is asking us actually to explore it, and feel that anger, and see that what is happening into your body, and don't be ashamed of it, and just explore that this is being human, but of course not beneficial, definitely. But uh, exploring it, and observing it, and letting it fully manifest in the mind, of course not in the verbal or not the physical level, but let it manifest in the mind, and then we start to observe it and completely feel it and embrace it. And then once you do it, and because your mind is now exploring the emotion, your mind is now watching the emotion, how it is happening, what is happening to body, what is happening to mind, what are the thoughts that I am bringing in, what are the memories that is coming and connecting to this whole experience. The more we, and then our mind is now watching and exploring, and therefore it does not, it cannot enhance that anger. So I think the Buddhist, what you find in the Buddhist sutras is this middle way of approaching the anger. Is kind of letting anger to arise in the mind, but is willing to like explore it, willing to and then even to investigate it, and first explore it and observe it and feel it fully and embrace it, and then of course investigate it. So therefore, brother, we have and there are a few things that we can finalize. We can find out what really makes us angry. One would be actually, I would like to call it lack of endurance, because we knew that in the beginning, the the very shortest way of explaining the mechanism of anger would be encounter of a sign of dislike and then unwise thinking. And these are the shortest way of putting thing by the Buddha. Of course, then we can or even elaborate what we mean by unwise thinking. But in this too, we see that first is the sign of dislike. What is happening is that for many of us, when we encounter a sign of dislike, it is something not agreeable. It's something uncomfortable. But most of us, have a very low level of enduring any unpleasantness. I think we have to really gradually, develop this ability to sometimes maintain certain, sometimes endure certain kind of unpleasantness. Think about like the room that you are living, is room that you are working is too hot, for example. It's too hot. So sometimes we cannot afford it, and we cannot really endure it, and we get with a very very little bit of discomfort, we get really angry. And let's say someone is late for 1 minute, and of course, it's always good to be punctual, and it's something that we all have to develop as a quality. But let's say someone is like late by 1 minute, and sometimes we don't have a kind of level of endurance that can really make us so angry. I think these days, what has happened because of the development of technology, and our life has become so smooth, and many things are happening in a very comfortable, smooth manner. Therefore, we have set we kind of spoil ourselves, so to speak, and we cannot even endure a little bit of discomfort, and even like sitting in traffic for some time, and we are experiencing so many fortunes and so many luxuries, and that also has somehow made us intolerant of even little discomfort that we may have to go through. So sometimes we should have a willingness, some kind of willingness to go through certain kind of discomfort. It's okay, it's okay to have this discomfort for a while. It could be physical pain sometimes. For example, you may hit your toe against something, and then and it's, of course, it's something painful and is uncomfortable. But then you will get angry about yourself too, or maybe get angry of the person who put that thing in the middle of the room. But if because the reason is that we cannot be with that discomfort. In life, we cannot avoid discomfort. We cannot avoid pain, or we cannot avoid unpleasantness. It's just part of our life. So there will be always some kind of disagreeable things. So therefore, we really need to like enhance our ability to endure. And endure, and in Pali we call adivasana. And Buddha said, in the Sabba Sutta, in the middle in discourses, that adivasana, endurance, is one way of overcoming asava, influxes, defilements, and therefore it's even common to the anger. So I think we need to enhance our level of endurance, and certain minor forms of discomfort, minor forms of delay should be okay. We should develop our ability. And so that could be one reason. And second one would be like not knowing how to deal with our own pain and fear, and that could be another cause, because sometimes anger is actually a cover up to our pain and also for our fear. Of course, in the story that I told you, that farmer was having a pain inside, and he has lost his cows. And if you do not know how to deal with pain, and we will express that pain as a frustration, as an anger to all people around us. It's like not knowing me to how to handle this pain, and we just simply express it as an anger, and sometimes fear. And most of the time, people reason is the fear. So I think, and in order for us to manage our anger, we should know how to deal with our own pain, like more internal pain, and also our own fear. It is something. I mean, of course, there are is like if something happened to you, if there's some loss happened to you, and and there are ways that we can deal with them. Of course, there's some. It can going to be a different topic, but mainly like forgiving oneself and then exploring those emotions, and then forgiving others, and dealing with and letting that emotion to be there, and without rejecting it. Sometimes we don't we want to resist our pain. We don't like to be in a bit pain, but sometimes we need to embrace it. We need to like explore it, and and then we also need to recognize our own fears. So whenever we get angry, sometimes we need to think about, am I throwing my pain to others, or am I overreacting to a fear, a sense of insecurity that there's within me? So not knowing how to handle them can also be a cause of anger. So when we experience anger of other people, we need to deeply think, maybe due to the that person is suffering, that person has a pain inside, or that person has felt insecure, he has some kind of fear, and that is why this person is acting like this. So it's mainly understanding this dependently arising nature of the anger. So that could be another reason. And of course the third one would be interpreting uh, all the all the disagreeable actions of others as intentional actions, like those people have intention to hurt us. Let's say, let's think that and this interpretation is a part of what we call unwise thinking. Let's say one day you encounter that someone hasn't cleaned their plates, maybe at home, someone hasn't cleaned their plates, cleaned their utensils. They have simply placed them in the sink, and that is whenever you encounter that dirty, unclean utensils and plates in the sink, and that is a sign of dislike, definitely. And then you focus on that. You kind of really focus your mind on that whole thing, that you don't see any other thing in the kitchen, and then it become a particular nimit, a sign of dislike. And then you may think that, oh, this person has done this intentionally. We may interpret that, this person really, is not caring. This person want me to clean this. He has done this intentionally. We may interpret it in that way, but we didn't know. We never know. Maybe sometime he was just about to watch that, and maybe he got a phone call, or we don't know. But we may interpret it as an intentional action. Sometimes those disagreeable, actions, deeds, unpleasant deeds can be intentional, yes, but most of the time they may not be fully intentional. Those things may not be done intentional to harm us. Let's say uh, we also saw someone has parked his or her car in a way that it blocks our car. So we want to come out, and that car has blocked our car. Okay, that's definitely a sign of dislike. And then we think that, oh, this person has done this intentionally. He really want me to be there. He don't really want to block me, and we may interpret it in that way. And definitely, that person, it maybe some person may have done it intentionally, but we have to explore it. We need to find it out, without quickly interpreting it. Most of the time, people are not really intentionally want to hurt us or harm us, but their actions may hurt or harm us. But if you always interpret every action as intentional actions, that people are doing these things in order to hurt me, if we interpret in that way always, definitely it can create anger in us. So we need to understand that sometimes certain actions are not really not intended to like hurt us, and maybe they are in the middle of something else, and so understanding that is really important. So that would be one cause. Okay, the next one is actually the fourth cause could be like fixed expectations. And many of the anger comes to our mind when we have expectations from other people, and this anger comes not due to certain deeds, but actually due to negligence of certain deeds, certain duties. And this is something that I was experiencing like last few days. Also, I have fixed expectations from the workers, from the contractor, that I expected them to to work efficiently, to and work fast, but I realized that my expectation is unrealistic, and sometimes those people are doing so many other projects too. There's weather, there's also other factors involved, including the weather, and so when we have fixed expectation from other people, that can also create anger too. So it's okay to have certain level, certain expectations, and that is how we can operate in the society. But I think we shouldn't make those expectations fixed. We had to make it loose. So now I have loosened my expectation from the workers, and I try to make my expectation more broad, more loose, and then I feel comfortable, and I can also talk to them well, and I can also explain them my concern rather than my frustration, and it's quite realistic to have loose expectation rather than fixed expectations. So whenever we feel angry next time, we have to pay attention. What are my fixed expectations here, and can I loosen them up a little bit? The last cause that I would like to share with you is that taking things personally. This is a very hidden, very important matter here. Most of the time, we get angry when we take things personally, and this is where the ego, our strong sense of self, is functioning, coming out. And we think that all these actions are directed towards me, and taking all these things personally. Let's say somebody, when you drive in the road, somebody happen to cut you through, and maybe that person just did it for some reason. But then if you interpret that as very personally, if you take it very personally, that person is threatening me, or that person is offending me, and that he did it intentionally, and he did it to me, and if you take it personally, and that can make us so angry. I think we need to understand that and people behave in their lives based on their own concerns and on needs, and other people have no time to focus on us all the time. And in certain actions they may really focus on us, but most of the things, most of the situation that we encounter, most of the actions that we encounter are not necessarily directed to exclusively to us. So and the more we take things personally, the more we feel offended, and that's where we really get angry. It's kind of hurting the ego. So we need to loosen that up too, because uh, people are people are dealing with their own issues, and their prime focus is to deal with their own issues, not really offending us. Sometimes, in certain cases, people may purposely offend us too, but most cases they are not doing it. So we should interpret all the disagreeable, unpleasant actions of others as a causal product, rather than they are directly um, directly as a directly intentional act to harm me. So we try to catch that ego coming up too. So these are the causes of anger that we can find. But in today, we are not going to talk much about how to deal with anger, but mainly to understand how anger can arise in our mind. I think now we have come to a certain realization that anger is a kind of causal product. But anger is also not one single phenomena. It starts with the very initial dislike, and then slowly grow into a strong form of anger or rage or ill will. And what really contribute for this growth is our unwise thinking, and the forms of unwise thinkings are the one that I explain, like interpreting them as intentional actions, and having fixed expectations, and taking this personally. But at the same time, one other important reason is that the lack of endurance. That sometimes we cannot take even a very simple form of displeasure, simple form of discomfort, and that can be also causes of anger. So when we take these things to account, maybe don't try to control anger in the beginning, but at least try to understand this whole phenomenon. And Buddha used the term pati vinaya. The anger has to be pati vinaya, which doesn't mean that we should suppress it, doesn't mean that we should express it. But what he mean by pati vinaya is more like gradually discipline it, gradually train it, and that's the goal of our Buddhist practice. So I will invite you next time when you get angry, when you feel kind of any kind of resistance or anger, whatever uncomfortable feeling, that energy that it's happening in your mind, we need to develop our mindfulness to observe it and just explore that anger. Don't try to quickly hide it away. Don't try to quickly run away from it. Don't try to distract yourself and try to do something. And just take that moment as a moment of learning and try to explore it. And then I will invite you to ask these questions, this set of questions that can help you to understand the real mechanism of anger, and then eventually help you to uh, um, overcome it. And one thing is that you can ask, is this matter, is this matter serious enough uh, to uh, to get angry? So what I'm really is telling you that we need to treat our anger with some kind of tenderness. And which anger is something that we need to attend with some kind of care and tenderness. And it's not something. It's very normal. It's not very human. It's not something that we should be ashamed of. Of course, if you grow into a higher level, if you keep getting angry all the time, and of course we need it's something that we really need to work on that. But everyone has to deal with this emotion, and the teachings of the Buddha has given so many techniques to deal with that. But initially, we shouldn't be ashamed of it. We should embrace it, and of course we should manage it. But we should be able to open to it and explore it, and then and treat anger with some kind of tenderness. So ask these questions: is this matter serious enough to get angry? And really ask that. Sometimes it can be really minor thing. Maybe simple as a minor comment made by someone, and maybe like 5 minutes delay, and we had to ask: is this matter serious enough for me to get angry? And most of the time, they may not be serious enough. There can be things that are serious enough, but we need to ask that question and make sure. And then the second question is that is this really a threat? Because sometimes, most of the time, we get angry when we interpret it as a threat, and we need to protect ourselves. We become defensive, and that's where anger comes. So is it realistic? Is it really a threat? Sometimes it's our interpretation of it. So double check, ask the question. And next one will be, is it really intentional? And that's the real key. Is it really intentional? And if this person has really intention to hurt me or harm me, or just he was dealing with his own issue that I just happened to be there. Just ask this question: is it really intentional? And then, is it directed to me? Is it directed to me? Is this really, that person is really focusing me, or that's, whatever, is it really directed to me? Sometimes we just happen to be there, just like the sage that told this, the disciples that he just happened to be there. He just happened to be on the tree. He just happened to be on the road when that that frustrated farmer was working. So we had to ask that question, and then we also had to ask, what is there to defend me? And sometimes we feel like we're defending. We really want to defend ourselves. It's so disgraceful, and that person is offending me, and we had to ask, what is there to defend me? And that's more like connecting the Buddhist idea of non-self. What is there to defend me? Is there any precious thing about me? And of course, we all have dignities. We all have self-respect, but what is there to defend me so hard? I mean, Is there any, a special thing that I have that other beings are not sharing with me? So, like connecting to that, non-self is also important. That can help us. And then lastly, the important question: will getting angry make a difference? And is it really useful, or is it really helpful in other way? Will getting angry make a difference? Is it helpful? So I hope that when we ask these questions, it can help us to understand the real mechanism of anger, and then also at least reduce and then maybe experience the displeasure and disagreeableness, and then and maybe even dislike and some kind of irritation, but then not let it to grow into a strong form of anger that can be really harmful to our own health and also harmful to society and others who live with us. Okay, brother. So these are the things that I would like to share with our friends today. Maybe if they have any other questions or any other things they'd like to know, maybe we can open the floor. Okay, we have a question here. Is there any link between jealousy and anger, especially matter related to opposite sex and money and possession? How to overcome them? Okay, brother Leslie, and definitely, anger can be an expression of certain kind of pain that is happening within us. Sometimes, I think, of course, jealousy can also be a cause of anger. You are correct in that. But I think again, it is again, that the inability to endure, is again, sorry, it's again about that interpretation, how we interpret. Is someone, whatever we see and how we interpret it, how we interpret it personally. I think whenever, maybe, as you mentioned, brother, whenever we feel angry, we need to explore it. What are the ingredients that I'm putting here, and why that sight, why that person, why that encounter is creating anger in me. And if we explore the interpretation part, how I'm interpreting this, and we will see if there's jealousy involved. And definitely jealousy can be a cause, and they all are interconnected. And we know that in the Buddhist literature also we have stories how certain jealousy people have done very harmful things to others. And there are certain stories in the Buddhist literature too. Yes, definitely jealousy can be a part of the anger too. Thank you, brother David. Is there any other question?
I don't see any questions being posted, Bante, but I have a personal question that I would like to pose. Uh, looking after older parents, especially aged parents, especially those who are in the 80s and 90s, is actually really a huge challenge. And those who are actually looking after their parents or their family members uh, actually go through a lot of pain and anger as well. Because sometimes old people can be very difficult when they are, especially they're bedridden, or they can't walk, and basically just because of age. So all these little problems, natural problems, and tendencies are common. But the caregiver, the person who's looking after, could be a daughter, a son, or a relative, or even a caregiver for that matter, who's paid. Their limits are always tested because of that. How do you what advice do you have for somebody like that, Bante, who is looking after aged parents?
Oh yeah, brother Leslie. I think I'm so appreciative of people who are taking care of these elderly, parents and elderly people. And brother, it's really challenging. It's really challenging, and we need such a high level of endurance and such a high level of empathy to deal with them. Yes, brother. When of course, when you are getting old, if we haven't have a good training in our mind, and even little things can irritate us. That's very common, for many people. So even a little sound, even little delay, and all these things can irritate them. And of course, their own physical inability, right? So the more they become unable to do things, and they get angry about themselves, and they are really frustrated because I mean, we don't like to accept it, So that's why we really need a strong Dhamma training to grow old, to accept, certain, changes happening within us. And once we cannot accept, it can create frustration, and even little thing can, get make us angry. Um, so I think your question is how the caregiver is dealing with this. Yeah, it's empathy, brother. It's empathy. As I tell, is this intentional? Is it directed to me? That, let's say the older person is scolding and shouting, maybe complaining for a little thing, and becoming very negative. So if we interpret that negative reaction as something intentional and something directed to me, and then we can get really upset. But if we interpret that whole thing as the condition that this person is in, he may scold me, he may even use my name to scold me, to maybe complain me, but even though he used the name, uh, but actually that person is expressing his own pain that is going in that person. So I think it's really challenging, but I think one way that we can go through, because we have to go through this. One way to go through this is that not taking things personally, and try to understand that person's discomfort, that person's pain, and then try to make things as comfortable for that person as much as we can. The more we make that person comfortable, the less frustrated that person will be, and less blaming and angry reactions there will be. But in order to do that, we need to maintain our sanity also. And in order to maintain our sanity, we should train our mind not to take things personally, and not to interpret every actions as intentional. Like intentional means intention to harm us, and they may not intend to hurt us. They may simply express in their own pain. So I think that's one way we can deal with that, brother. But it's a great sacrifice. I think it's a great meritorious deed, and it can be a very good opportunity to train ourselves. And as you mentioned, it's like this situation test our limits. So how about enhancing our limits, upgrading our limits? That's what we have to do. Okay, we have a nice
That's
comment.
that's a comment by Brother Calvin, Bhante.
Yeah, be patient with the elderly and remember they will not be around for long. Just enjoy and appreciate their company when they are still around. Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother Kelvin. Yeah, even their scolding is something you need to take their even their scolding as something that an interaction, a memorable interaction. I think he is correct. They will not be with us for long. Okay, Rachel, how do we interact with egoistic people without getting angry? Yes, Rachel, and definitely they can be they can be very clever in making us angry, and now the question we have to ask from ourselves, Rachel, do we want to fall into their trap? Because of their egoistic nature, they will do things, they will make comments, they will behave in a way that create more anger in us. But do we want to fall into that trap? I think one way, Rachel, we can deal with them is to understand to have like those people, let's say egoistic. Maybe let's put it, certain people have certain tendency to be egoistic. They may not be egoistic all the time. We cannot fully categorize everyone as permanently egoistic. Sometimes we can be egoistic. One time we can be less compassionate on the other time. But whenever they are egoistic, we know with that, from our learning of the Dhamma, and that egoistic behavior is foremost is harmful to himself. because that egoistic, behavior simply feed his own ego, that can create so much of suffering, so much of pain to himself. Of course, he may create suffering to others too. I think one way we need to deal with that, is to like look at these people as still unevolved people. They are yet to evolve. So rather than getting angry, we have to be like compassionate. These people have a long way to go. These people have so many things to fix in their life, and they may create problems, throughout their life. Sometimes maybe because they are in the position of power, they may be able to get rid of, get over some of them, but eventually they will hit the wall. They will create problems for themselves. And I think one way to deal with them, Rachel, is not really get angry with them, because when we get angry with them, we give them power, and just feel sorry for them. Feel sorry for them, have empathy, and have compassion, because they are yet to evolve. They need to evolve, and just make a wish that may these people the realize the consequences of this egoistic behavior. It's not healthy for them. It's not healthy for others. And these people are definitely getting into troubles. They're getting into trouble spiritually. They're getting into troubles, socially. They get into troubles on their personal lives. So they are not happy people. So feel compassionate towards them and try to have some empathy. Okay, sister. Oh no, this Oi, maybe brother or sister. When one is really angry, does attending counseling in anger management course help him? Or one is really angry. Of course, attending counselings can be really useful, but not when one is angry. Of course, maybe we need to have these tools beforehand. If we have an issue of anger, maybe it's better to listen to this kind of Dhamma talks and read some teachings of the Buddha, and also, of course, going into some, counselings is a good thing. But I think we need to, have those skills before we get angry. But if you have a habit of getting angry, maybe it's better we get some help from counselors. But we can also get help from the Buddha's teaching. But I mean, what we are really doing by reading the teachings of the Buddha and also meeting with counselors is that you are actually developing more tools to deal with anger. So it's really good thing that you can get help from the counselors, and then make sure that you learn the tools, and make sure that you understand the techniques that they're telling you. And the more tools you have, the easier for you to deal with anger. So it's okay to be equipped with as many tools as you can to deal with this difficult emotion. Yeah. Okay, Sister Angie, Bhante, my anger is much towards myself. How can I stop anger about myself, like towards my failure or incapabilities? Sister Angie, I really appreciate your honesty and your willingness to share with this, and it is common. And Sister Angie, our anger can be directed to outward. It can be directed to inward. And many people have self-hatred too. So the question is that how we can overcome them. I think, Sister Angie, the problem is that we have put a very high form of expectation on ourselves due to social pressure. And because there's a societal expectation of ourselves. Society expect us to perform in a particular way. If you are in a particular age, if you're in a particular gender, if you're in a particular position, and there's a certain set of expectation by the society. Once this society has this expectation, we internalize those expectation to us, internalize, and then we expect from ourselves to perform those things. I think we just have to be kind to ourselves. Just have to be kind to ourselves. Sometimes our expectations of ourselves are too much, and they're not realistic, and they're too much, and those expectations most of the time are not genuine expectations, not really what you really need to do within yourself. Those are what society expect from you, and then we have internalized them. Therefore, sister, what we have to do is that we have to be kind to ourselves. We need to remember that our primary goal in our life is not necessarily to be successful in career. Of course, that's a very good part of it. Our ultimately, what really matters in our life is that how much goodness that we have developed in our mind, and how much help that we have done to others, and how helpful we were to others. So sometimes those certain expectations that we have on ourselves are do not matter at the end. So just we have to be kind to ourselves, and we have to loosen some of the expectations. So the short answer would be, we just have to be kind to ourselves, and it's okay. It's okay that we fail in some cases, and of course we should try. We should maintain certain level of success, but sometimes we put too much expectations on ourselves, and they're not genuine. They are simply what other people want us to do. So be kind to yourself, and appreciate your life, and be grateful to whatever abilities you have, and just help others with whatever abilities you have, and use your time wisely to have inner growth and develop a deep understanding of the life. As long as we continue growing in our understanding, in our wisdom, as long as we are being helpful to anyone around us, yeah, okay. Just be kind to yourself.
Okay, Bhante, I think we've come to the end of the Q&A. I don't see any more new questions, but there are a lot of comments, good, pleasant comments. Bhante, maybe you can read it later from our Facebook page.
Okay, brother.
So I think we have come to the end of this evening's Dhamma sharing on this topic of why do we get angry. And basically, Bhante, I think many people are now more aware of this situation of how to manage their anger, because I think this emotion is a very dangerous emotion sometimes. A lot of people get into trouble because they can't manage their anger, and they fall into all kinds of situations where which is totally unnecessary sometimes. So I think your advice this evening will help many of us to manage our anger, be it intentional or unintentional. And talking about contractors, Bante, I think this problem is a universal problem. Not just contractors in America, but I think contractors in Malaysia are the
Yeah,
same. So,
yeah, brother. I expected. I knew about how these contractors and workers are working in my own country. Uh,
yeah,
I expected that contractors and workers in the US will be different, but my expectation is wrong.
yeah. So don't worry. I think it's a universal problem. So don't worry too much, and be happy that
Yeah.
at least now you can still move into a new center. Uh,
Yes.
for for those of you who are wanting to know a little bit of Bante's center, he's at Pittsburgh. He's at the Pittsburgh Buddhist Center. This is the website. You can visit the website here. And there's also a YouTube channel for the Pittsburgh Buddhist Center, and it's got a nice video of the new place that Bante is moving into and the help that he needs. If you can help to raise some money for him for his renovations and refabrication of some of the buildings there,
Yeah. I
please do
also
visit. Yeah, yeah.
was also want to make this an opportunity to thank Buddhist Mahavihara, and I think Buddhist Mahavihara and Sasana Abhivrudhi
Abiur.
Society has donated for the renovation projects of our Buddhist center. I'm really grateful, and Buddhist Mahavihara just voluntarily gave this donation to us, and I really appreciate and really honor your generosity.
Thank you, Bante. I think it's reciprocal, Bante. You have helped us in many ways. So this is our small way of contributing to your success in America and in Pittsburgh especially. And so I hope our devotees will pitch in to help you in whatever way they can. So, please visit this website, and also to the YouTube channel on the same channel. I think it's called Pittsburgh Buddhist Center on YouTube. So, Bante, can we now conduct the Anumodana before we
Yes.
end?
Okay, thank you, brother. Thank you very much again for giving this opportunity. I really enjoy being with you all. And then let us now take a moment to share the good merits that we generated by being mindful and being attentive, being reflective and contemplative, and listening to the teachings of the Buddha. And today we learn very important two terms of the Buddha: the patigha nimitta, the sign of dislike, and ayoniso manasikara, unwise thinking. And so by listening to these teachings and by maintaining our mind very attentive and mindful, we generated so much goodness in our hearts and good energy. And we can now share these merits with everyone else. First of all, let us share this merits with all of our departed relatives, our ancestors, people who has done for us so much, and let us be grateful. Let us wish that may all of our departed relatives share these merits. May they be benefited from these merits. May they rejoice in these merits. May they all be well, happy, and peaceful wherever they may be. Let us chant. Idang mi ñātīnaṃ hotu sukita hontu ñātayo. Idang mi ñātīnaṃ hotu sukita hontu ñātayo. Idang mi ñātīnaṃ hotu sukita hontu ñātayo. Let us also share these merits with all other living beings. If there's any living being in this world who would like to share this merit, may he or she do so. May all living beings share our merits. May all living beings be well, happy, and peaceful. Ettavata che amhehi sambhatam punya sampadang sabbe devanumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya sabbe sattha anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Okay, thank you everyone.
Thank you, Bante. So, on behalf of the monks of the Buddhist Mahavihara and the Committee of Management, we'd like to thank Bante for taking time off this Friday morning in Pittsburgh to join us and to discuss with us why do we get angry. And also to our sponsors this evening, thank you so much for sponsoring this Dhamma sharing. And to all our listeners who actually have joined us live here at the Buddhist Mahavihara's Facebook pages, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your continued support. This Sunday, we have Bhante Professor Lenege Srinivasa from Sri Lanka who will be talking on using Samadhi concentration for healing. So the topic will be using Samadhi for healing. So it's an interesting topic as well. This is by Bhante Professor Lenege Srinivasa from Sri Lanka. So with that, we've come to the end of this evening's Dhamma sharing. With that, thank you everyone and have a pleasant evening, one and all. Sadhu.
Sadhu, Sukhi Hotu.
Sukhi Hotu Bhante.